No, I'm going to explain to you real quick.
Continue walking.
But don't be rolling out. There's a reason for it.
Right.
I woke up this morning, Alex, and it was about 5:30 or so, and I saw Bitcoin around 37,000. What makes it move so fast, right back to 40,000 within 2 hours? I know it's pretty volatile, but this morning I was like, what was the news today? Like, are you in touch with it enough to know why it moved so much just in one day today?
So let me just say this. There is no such thing as news affecting price. All we do as human beings, as the idiots that we are, is we try and look backwards. We see an event, something happens, and then we try and apply some sort of linear modeling or linear understanding. We look for some sort of event to justify why something happened. And it's never the case. Markets are complex systems. They move up and down based on a blend of complex inputs that we will never understand. So drawing tea leaves on a chart, talking about news, talking about all that crap, it's literally meaningless. The Bitcoin price is merely a representation of the world and the individuals that it contains coming to terms with how to value perfect money. That's literally it. And Bitcoin being at 35,000, 40,000, it's all meaningless. Basically, long term, the only thing that counts is the fact that every single human on earth and every single good service, product, anything is going to be denominated in Bitcoin, and every single human will at some point hold Bitcoin. And that's what really matters. So all the day-to-day crap is just, pointless, mindless, useless. It means nothing. And the volatility is just merely a function of people's volatility and coming to terms with, how do I value perfect money? And nobody knows, or very few people at the moment know how to value perfect money. If the whole world did, I guarantee you one Bitcoin will be enough to buy you the city of California. Sorry, the state of California. Like,
Wow,
Bitcoin's not going to $1 million or, $10 million. Bitcoin's going to $1 billion at least.
So you have conviction. I have conviction too. We've spent about, I think, 180 million or so in mining equipment. We have a nice facility in Michigan, about 617,000 square feet. We have a data center. We've only built out about 60,000 of it. We can go to about 325 megawatts. I obviously like the mining side of it, but there's part of me that wish I just would have bought Bitcoin with that 180 million. Right? I just would have stroked a check. What do you think of the mining industry, Alex? What do you think of the mining industry?
I think the mining industry is one of the most important things on the planet. It is going to be how we learn to harness energy, to harness energy, but to also start to price energy accurately. Because at the moment, the world is, it's a clown show. We don't accurately price energy, with all the subsidies and government intervention and this and that and all the junk that's in between. We basically misprice everything on the planet, particularly energy. So what Bitcoin does is, like, by transforming energy directly into a monetary unit and an incorruptible payments network, like, we can actually start to price energy better. And for the first time, like, there's an engineer, physicist, anthropologist, guy called Vaclav Smil, and he wrote an incredible book called Energy and Civilization, which I always recommend people read. And in there, he states that the universal currency is energy. Bitcoin is literally energy money when you think about what it is. And so what it does is it aligns the tool that human beings use to enable cooperation amongst each other, which is money. It aligns money with energy. And, fusing those two together through mining is an incredible feat. And I think it's one of the most important industries, and will be one of the most important industries for the next few decades. So you're in the right place.
Wow. I mean, you remind me a lot of some of the thought leaders in Bitcoin. I mean, I'm pretty, wish I knew more about you. Wow. Tell us a little bit about your background, how you got into Bitcoin. Like, how did it get started?
Me was so my background's varied, mostly entrepreneurial, but I've always been a avid student of like philosophy, anthropology. I studied physics when I was in university, and engineering and all that sort of stuff, and it just seems like everything kind of, I mean, Bitcoin touches all of these things. That's the beauty of it. But my thing was a little bit, I guess, accidental. Like there was a dumbass friend of mine who was just, buying things on the internet with Bitcoin. And he mentioned it again. And I had heard about Bitcoin sort of like early days. I was a gold silver bug in 2010, 2011, buying gold and silver during the original QE and all the madness that was going on then. And I'd heard about Bitcoin. I can't remember if it was Max Kaiser or someone jumping up and down on a couch, but I kind of like wrote it off. I was like, yeah, whatever. I'll just stick with my, my gold and my silver. And I never looked at it again. I was extremely entrepreneurial. I was starting all sorts of businesses. And it wasn't until 2016 again, like I had a catalyst to kind of look at it again. And I started slowly. And I've got a meme, which is I came for the money, but I stayed for the money. And what I mean by the money is like the money is the language of value. It is the one language that'll be with us from the beginning of time until the end of time. And it's like, it's the most important language. It's how we organize ourselves. And as I started digging through that, like all these threads and elements of stuff that I'd been interested in throughout my life started to come to bear. Like I found Bitcoin in all of them. And it's funny, I was just on a podcast with John Ballas talking about like the fractal nature of reality. It's like when you find something like Bitcoin and you discover how true it is, and you discover how much it represents like nature, it represents morality, it represents aesthetics, it represents gravity, Bitcoin, like you hear all these things. Bitcoin is a battery, Bitcoin is energy, Bitcoin is this, Bitcoin is that. It's like, it just sucked me in. So then basically since, 2017, that, accelerated for me. And, I climbed Mount Stupid, as I say, like I shitcoined a little bit and realized that there was just a big, basically shitcoins and crypto and all of that moronicity is basically like, and it's a distraction from what really matters, which is the discovery of energy money. Like that's the most important thing that's happened to our species, maybe in millennia. And anyway, yeah, I just doubled down on that and basically decided to A, build a business around it, and then B, do a bunch of writing around it.
I would be foolish to not ask you about the other currencies that are the other crypto that's out there. We only mine Bitcoin. We did mine Ethereum at one time. We found it really difficult to maintain the GPUs. Yeah. But I'm curious what you think of Ethereum.
Scam. Like it's basically a modern Ponzi. It is the replacement of bankers and bureaucrats with nerds who want to be bankers and bureaucrats. Like the whole point of Bitcoin, and this is the innovation, is that it is the removal of the issuer of a money. Like again, money is supposed to represent time, energy, and scarce resources in some way, shape, or form, right? It is the language of value. It encodes those things and enables human beings amongst each other to store the product of the labor and trade it. It is the ultimate tool. If any entity, government, institution, foundation, group, nerds, bankers, whatever, doesn't matter. If any entity has the capacity to issue money, they have the ultimate power. And what ends up happening is they can amass economic power, through which they can amass political power, through which they can double down on mass economic power. And you get basically the institutional decay or the what we see, we get the clown show that we're living in, right? So Bitcoin's innovation is to put money into the realm of the physical laws of the universe. You and I can't change gravity. We can't change the speed of light. We can't change thermodynamics. Like these are fundamental physical laws. And Bitcoin kind of places money in that realm, and it does away with all the rulers and the issuers. So all of these other things like Ethereum and all that sort of stuff, the only thing they share in common with Bitcoin is a little bit of technical architecture. But in terms of philosophy, in terms of raison d'etre, like the reason for existence, they are literally no different to the Zimbabwean, dollar, to the Venezuelan bolivar, to the, USD shitcoin, to the Australian shitcoin, like to all of that. They're all the same. They're all basically attempts at issuing someone's own money. And the lemmings and the people who want to be slaves, they basically buy that stupid shit with the stupid promise, and basically give up their autonomy to an organization that's going to issue the money. Like it's all stupidity, and it's all a distraction. And in fact, if anything, it's probably the most effective attack on Bitcoin, more than anything else.
The thought, though, about Ethereum, I thought the concept here was that these smart contracts, this sort of using the blockchain to have these smart contracts, the security of them, the tracking of them, you're not a fan of that?
First of all, it's an impossibility, right? Because you can't scale that. Like, you can't scale transactions on a blockchain, let alone every single decision that would need to happen in order to make a broad set of smart contracts possible, right? So that's impossible, first and foremost. Like, you can't do that on a blockchain unless you centralize the freaking thing, in which case you've just got a normal program running. So let's just go and run the damn thing on AWS anyway. Like, it doesn't matter, right? So first of all, it's a physical and technological impossibility. It's not like, oh, we'll get there someday. No. It's a physical, technological impossibility to have a decentralized network make every single decision, codify every single decision into a thing. Number two, then you have a problem of Turing completeness, meaning that there will always be bugs. Now, this is where smart contracts are a really, 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 really dumb idea, is that in order to build a Turing complete program, and have it execute all of the important decisions, you would need to know in advance every single scenario that could possibly happen so that you can codify that in order to avoid catastrophe in the in the smart contract, which is why every single Ethereum smart contract that has been valuable enough has failed. Because make it valuable enough, there'll be a bounty to go and get it, and that's exactly what happens. Whether it was DAO, whether it's their shitty multi-sig account, whether it's these new DeFi things, they're all broken fundamentally speaking because it's impossible to know every single variable up front. So therefore, you can never build a completely sound Turing complete execution thing. Like so smart contracts, to codify smart contracts and place important decisions into that kind of infrastructure means that you get one thing wrong, you turn your society. So let's say everything was running on smart contracts. You can turn society into a dystopia very, very, very quickly. The reason we have wetware in the middle, like so if you're familiar with the difference between the spirit of the law and the letter of the law, is that you don't want to make everything the letter of the law, because if there's one problem in the letter of the law, it can very quickly become a dystopia. So you need spirit of the law in the middle. You need wetware to separate that. So all of this smart contract stuff is junk.
It's hard for me to argue because I love Bitcoin. I bought into a lot of everything you've said about Bitcoin. But aren't you really effectively saying all the other stuff just doesn't really matter? Or do you think any of the thousands of okay, let's just talk about hundreds of the cryptocurrency, not the tokens that are part of smart contracts, because that's a whole different argument. Is any of the other stuff valuable to you at all? Like the break-offs of Bitcoin Cash, all that stuff?
No, I mean, those things are completely economically irrelevant. Like the forks and all that sort of stuff are like the height of stupidity. And then the rest of them, like whether it's Ethereums or the Cardanos and all that sort of stuff, they don't need an economic network. Like they don't need an economic unit. They don't need a money. That's effectively what these things are doing. This is why they're so immoral, is that they're basically issuing their own money under, like they create a bunch of verbal diarrhea and buzzword salad to justify the issuance of their own money. Like, so first of all, like I said, smart contracts are just inherently pointless creations. Like the only smart contracts that we need are basically like what you have of the Bitcoin script contracts, like hash time lock and that kind of stuff, like very, very basic stuff that you can fundamentally codify and then enable wetware contracts to operate on top and then settle on Bitcoin, for example, right? So that's how you sort of use smart contracts. You don't make the wetware, the complex decision making. You can't codify complex decision making. It's a really bad idea. So first of all, like whether it's smart contract ideas, dumb idea. NFTs, another dumb idea. Like, what are we doing with NFTs? We're conflating art with digital signatures. And then, what we're doing is we're actually making art more stupid. This whole argument about, oh, you can pay an artist directly. Well, guess what? An artist just has to put a freaking a Bitcoin address on his art and he can get paid directly. So that's like, it's the wrong answer. So it's like NFTs are, again, an attempt to try and place information and digital information at that behind a paywall when digital information always wants to become free. So it's fighting gravity. So it's another stupidity. DeFi is another stupidity as well. It's like, what problem is DeFi solving? Nothing other than giving gamblers and degenerates another place to gamble and degenerate. So it's like all of these things, they're all narratives and stories which are a function of a broken world that we live in. And they're all kind of attempts at finding a narrative to justify the issuance of your own money, because that's really how all these things make money. Like Ethereum hasn't built anything useful at all, nothing, zero. Neither has any other cryptocurrency, quote unquote. They haven't done anything useful. All they've done is they've issued their own money, and they've they printed money out of thin air. So for that, they're fantastic.
Well, like if you think of that XRP, then you're really saying they basically Ripple effectively. They got some Ripple for themselves, and then they issued out in the marketplace and printed their own currency.
And what have they done? Nothing. They've just made announcement after announcement after announcement after announcement for 9 years, and they've done nothing.
It is interesting about the SEC's case, because that is actually an example of probably. It seems like that sounds like a security, right? You put it into your own account, you're able to issue more of it, so you're issuing something tradable, whereas
they're all securities. That's the reality.
Why is it you think? I mean, without getting down super rabbit holes here, why is it you think that Bitcoin? Because it was the first that. Basically, the SEC said, "Hey, it's not a security." Why is that different?
Bitcoin kind of had like this immaculate conception, and me and Breedlove riffed on this in the early days when when I was in LA back in 2019 or whatever, and we just sat down and we just like kind of like talked through this, and he talks about it really nicely in his article, Bitcoin and the number zero, and in there he talks about like the path dependent nature that Bitcoin took for its immaculate conception. And basically you had this sort of mixture of factors. You had a completely anonymous founder. You had the initial uptake of the cypherpunks. You had Bitcoin had no value. It had no marketing department. It was launched in 2008, 2009, right at the point of disbelief and all this sort of stuff. And then it was the disappearance of the founder. The 10,000 Bitcoin for the pizza, Silk Road, like it was all these sort of emergent things that happened, the organic rise of people mining it themselves from CPUs to GPUs and all that sort of stuff. So it kind of like happened in a way that it organically infiltrated society completely under the radar and completely without like leadership. It wasn't pushed in any particular direction. It was just picked up by different things. Like Satoshi could not have predicted Silk Road, for example. And Silk Road was a killer app for Bitcoin at that particular point in time. So what we can't do is we can't go back to the beginning of Bitcoin and start that again. It was like the genesis was perfect, and that period of time is something that we can't replicate. So that 0 to 1 moment basically happened. And now Bitcoin's in a position because of that genesis that it is running on so many nodes, on so many things around the world. Like it is now impossible to shut down. So there is nothing anybody on the planet can do to turn off Bitcoin. But if I was a government and I wanted to, I can go talk to Vitalik and friends and talk to Infura, and I guarantee I can shut down Ethereum tomorrow. Guarantee you.
It's interesting.
It's the same with the rest of them.
I remember mining Bitcoin in the early days by not by CPU, but actually just by a computer, I believe it was. And the guy who was mining it with us, he had to send, he would ship the Bitcoin somewhere, like to the address. And then the money would come in a FedEx envelope or something.
Yeah.
Those are the early days, right? And he sold 5,000 Bitcoin for $5. I got to feel bad for him right now, right? But
Well, I mean, look, that had to happen though. That's the beauty of. So this is why I call Bitcoin organic, right? Like, there was no pre-mine, there was no Ethereum Foundation, which is going to create all these tokens, hold 70% of it themselves, issue 30% to the market. Like, that didn't exist. Like, Bitcoin was organic. Like, there was no price, there was no marketing department, there was no issuance. It was all started from zero, and whoever put the work in, the proof of work, was able to acquire and amass some, and it had to go from zero to something. And that's why, like, Marty Malmi, who was that first transaction, that transaction was he was paid $5 in PayPal for 5,000 Bitcoin. But then you had the two pizzas, which was the second transaction, and then subsequently from there, right? So that is a series of events that cannot happen again. That's done. We can't reverse time. So we can copy Bitcoins architecturally, but we can't copy that series of events.
So you see it as not just a store of value, but a store of ability to have finance. You see it as I could own it and use it to pay for things, and it's not just a store of value, but it's a currency. Do you effectively see it I think Jack talks about it as the sort of currency of the internet, right? I mean, is it
totally? So I'll talk you through something that I was discussing in a podcast earlier today, which is Bitcoin as perfect money, right? So people throw around store of value, meeting exchange, and all this sort of stuff. So let's actually do this interactively. How do you define store of value?
I thought store of value was I always thought in my mind was more like owning something that didn't have income. Like if you owned a piece of gold, it didn't have income, but you could use the gold and melt it down for jewelry or other components or medical uses. So therefore, you could store it and use it at a later date for some sort of service. That's what I kind of thought it was.
Okay, but I mean, you could arguably do that with, with lead. So why is lead not a great store of value?
Well, I think probably the abundancy of it. I mean, you could go mine more lead effectively, and I also believe it's harsh. It can kill people. But you still need lead. But my point is that there's lots of things that could be a store of value. But I think that, I guess the thing that I would freak out about gold or lead or any of those things is effectively if you ever mined an asteroid, you might get more gold than you ever needed, right? I mean, more than the Earth ever had, kind of thing.
Yeah, that, and then I mean, also if a better money comes along, then it loses its monetary value and moves towards its industrial value, which is, I think, the ultimate end for gold. Right? We're finally going to use all the gold that's sitting in these freaking vaults and put them in electronics, and we'll have great electronics in the future. Once gold loses 90% of its monetary value.
That's a good example. What's its industrial value versus? I mean, so there you go. I got that. I got you. Yeah. That makes sense.
So anyway, so I'll come. Like most people, when they talk about store of value, they think of something that doesn't that is not volatile. Okay, so they think a good store of value is something that is not volatile, and that's actually wrong. Then some people give a more sophisticated answer to store of value. They say something that maintains purchasing power, which I would have agreed a couple of years ago, but I believe that's also wrong. For me, a store of value, or particularly in a monetary sense, a store of value, the perfect store of value is to do with proportionality. So if I know my proportion in relation to the whole, and Bitcoin is a perfect store of value because no matter what, if I own one Bitcoin today, I know I have 1/21 millionth of the entire network. And in 100 years, I'm going to have 1/21 millionth of the entire network. In 1,000 years, I'm going to have 1/21 millionth of the entire network. As a result, it is a perfect store of value. My proportionality in relation to the whole is a fixed sum. That has not existed before, not with gold, not with anything else, right? So so when we think about the functions of money, store of value, medium of exchange, unit of account, Bitcoin is a perfect store of value, 10 out of 10. Medium of exchange, a lot of people conflate this one. They think it's got something to do with transactional throughput, and that is also false. Medium of exchange means, can I exchange something with whomever I want without requiring permission? And that, once again, tell me, can you stop a Bitcoin transaction? No. Can the US government stop a Bitcoin transaction?
No.
Nobody can stop a Bitcoin transaction. So as a result, Bitcoin is actually the perfect medium of exchange. Things like transactional throughput, etc., they'll be solved. Lightning Network, third layer, fourth layer, whatever we're going to do, right? But in terms of the permissionless nature of Bitcoin being an uncensorable payments network, it's fucking perfect. So again, 10 out of 10, medium exchange. And then lastly, unit of account. So people, always say, oh, Bitcoin's not a great unit of account because you can't measure other goods and services. And that's partially true. But what's really, really, really important here, and I had this epiphany actually recently, I thought Bitcoin's utility as a unit of account was a function of its divisibility. So like, you can divide Bitcoin down to 8 decimal places, which means you can, measure things in sats and it's actually useful, blah, blah, blah. But really what gives Bitcoin a perfect, like a 10 out of 10 score on unit of account is the fact that for the first time ever, we actually know the total supply of one side of the equation. So like to account for everything else, previously, like you don't know how much US dollars there is. We don't know how much gold there is. We don't know how much silver there is. So we had these two unknowns, and we've done a pretty good job at using an unknown to account for everything else, right? But everything's always in flux. For the first time in history, once we're on a Bitcoin standard, we'll know that there's 21 million Bitcoin that everything else can be valued in. So it's actually, mathematically speaking, a perfect unit of account as well. And that kind of perfection has never existed before in money. Like Bitcoin is kind of what I'm calling these days an apex discovery. It's an apex invention. Like everything throughout history, like our process of finding a better money has gone through, promises to scratches on a wall to shells and stones and bananas and freaking metals and gold and silver and paper and all sorts of stuff. And we've actually reached the apex. We've reached perfect money.
I wrote an article that I said that I thought the Federal Reserve should buy $500 billion worth of Bitcoin and put it on its balance sheet. That this was going to become unstoppable. And the Chinese banning it are going to actually make it more desirable. That they're going to make people, the more the government pushes back, the more people want that. There actually hasn't been, as human beings, there hasn't been a lot of history, 200 some years of the US dollar, and then 40% of it being printed in effectively the last 33 years. In the last 3 years, sorry, not 33 years.
3 years, yeah.
3 years. If I think it's hard for people to believe because they've only known, like I only knew for a long time I had a pager or a touch tone phone or a rotary phone. And I always said, why would I ever need a cell phone? Why did I pay $5 a minute? Of course, that number came down. Now, of course, I have 3 cell phones. Don't have a pager. There's something that I inherently know is true about this. This is interesting about the way you're describing it, because I absolutely believe that these sort of credit system, but it's going to be controlled, and that Bitcoin might be that. It probably is that thing, and that I wonder in your mind, because people say, what if someone else just created that? I'm like, I heard Michael Saylor say, but the energy's already been created. People have already put the infrastructure, time, and energy for that. But do you believe someone could just, like a government or anyone can create, why not use this instead of Bitcoin? I mean, or do you think that genie's just not possible to put that genie back in the bottle?
Well, first of all, the government would have to somehow build a time machine to take us back 10 years. Then the government would need to pretend they're an anonymous Satoshi and issue it in so that's the thing that makes Bitcoin special, is that, that genesis, that immaculate conception. So a government going ahead and issuing their own money is no different than them issuing the US dollar today. It's like all they're doing is just digitizing it then, and they're going to say, oh yeah, we've built it on a new technological framework, which we're going to call the US dollar blockchain or whatever. It's like, it's just based on a completely different promise, which is here's some more government money and trust us. Whereas Bitcoin is based on, no, here's a digital constitution, which you as the user enforce. And as you enforce it as a user, you're in sync with everybody else who's enforcing it. And because you're all in sync, you have a network that is independent of any authority. So anything that a government does, by definition, is going to be in opposition to Bitcoin. It is basically an issued money, much like all the other cryptos. They're all the same shit. That's why I place them all in the same basket. It's like Bitcoin is completely different to that. And I guess to wrap that answer up is like, Yes, the government will do it. The US will do it. Their holy grail is being able to issue money that they have total control over. Because if I control your wallet, I control you. And what does the government want more than anything else is to, distill human beings into entries on a spreadsheet that they can control. And the perfect way to do that is by issuing a CBDC. And I kind of said this at Bitcoin 2021 last year on stage. I was like, the line that will separate free individuals from the slaves is those who hold Bitcoin and those who do not. And that's it. That's how important this is. If you're going to sit there and use government money, fuck me. Particularly when they issue CBDCs, and when they start trying to patch the clusterfuck of a world they've created up with UBI and all the other stuff. Basically, UBI is going to come with strings, man. If you don't vote for this person, if you don't say this online, if you don't behave like this, if you don't do this, sorry, we just turned off your money as a warning. You know what I mean? That kind of stuff is literally dystopian sci-fi coming to life.
And by the way, it does seem like it's coming to life. By the way, with UBI and all this other stuff, but I kind of see Bitcoin as sort of those. Remember those sci-fi movies where how many space credits do you have and stuff like this? I don't know if you can answer this question, but so how do we earn it? Because if you don't mine it, you have to use fiat currency to buy it. So and you can't issue it. So other than mining it, how does a person issue it? Is your thesis that I just take my money and continue to accumulate more Bitcoin on my balance sheet over time, and the transition from fiat? Because really, the El Salvadorian president, what El Salvador has done is something I didn't think about until just 2 weeks ago. The IMF pumps US dollars to El Salvador, and they don't even use their own currency. It just gets inflated away, right? Just like Venezuela. So them mining Bitcoin is a hedge to the dollar, and the dollar is really petrodollars backed by the U.S. military. So they're going to be the standard dollar. If the dollar is the standard fiat, then isn't everyone else dead if they're not on either Bitcoin or the dollar? Or I can't conceptualize how this is going to transform into, or is it just going to be that my Bitcoin is going to go higher, and let's say, Alex, I hired you to speak at my conference. You're going to say, pay me in Bitcoin, and I'm going to pay you in Bitcoin, and eventually...
That's it. Yeah. So that's how the transition is going to look, is that at some point in time, nobody in their right mind is going to swap their Bitcoin with you for any amount of toilet paper money issued by a government. And they're going to fall one by one, basically. So the weaker ones will fall off first. There is no amount of Venezuelan bolivars that you can give me that I'll give you Bitcoin for. Zero. I don't care. You can give me all of the Venezuelan bolivars on the planet. I ain't going to give you a single Satoshi. So at some point, that's going to happen, and that's going to catch up with every single fiat currency. Nobody will trade their products, goods, services, or their time for anything other than Bitcoin. Now, that's a transition. That ain't going to happen overnight. It'll happen bit by bit by bit. But there comes a point where one respects themselves enough to say, hey, you want to pay me? You want my services? You want something from me? Here's my Bitcoin address. Send it here.
We sponsor a BitNile. That's the public company I'm the founder of and executive chairman. We're on the New York American. We sponsor an IndyCar. We want to get the word out. We have a new exchange called Earnity. And of course, it allows you to trade a lot of different cryptos. And we're trying to be universal. I'm kind of biased, obviously, to Bitcoin. I only mine Bitcoin. The driver, who we sponsor the car and the driver said to me, can you pay me in Bitcoin? I thought it was fascinating, right? And you saw Odell Beckham get paid in Bitcoin. And that's what you mean, really. Eventually they say, I want that service. I just want Bitcoin.
That's it. Yeah. That's exactly what happens over time. That's how we transition onto a Bitcoin standard. The thing is, see, once again, it's one of those complex emergent phenomena that you can't map. There's no we start here and then we go here and then we go. That's not how it happens. It's at any particular point in time of Bitcoin's three functions: store, value, medium exchange, unit of account. A different one is more valuable to a different person at a different time, right? So, for example, if you are in in Nigeria, Bitcoin's medium of exchange functionality is probably really important, and more important maybe than the store of value exchange, because maybe you just can't make payments. So it's this really complex thing, right? And we as individuals, and this is the beauty of a free market, and Bitcoin is basically a free market animal, is at any point in time, you and I have the complete, total control and voluntary option to spend our Bitcoin for something that we deem more necessary than the amount of Bitcoin we have at that particular point in time. And we've all done it. I mean, 10 years ago, it was for 2 pizzas, 10,000 Bitcoin. Now, if I, let's say, God forbid something happens to a loved one, knock on wood, and, you need to go to hospital or whatever, as much as you want to hodl your Bitcoin, like you might need to save the life of someone you care about, and you need to pay a bill, and you might have to sell your Bitcoin. So like value is subjective. And the beauty of Bitcoin is that it allows you to part with it when you want to, irrespective of any other authority. But if you don't have to, then don't spend it. Shit, like it's easy.
Hey, we're happy to edit this out, Alex. But I was asked to ask you why your Twitter account was suspended. I think I was raging about some bullshit lockdown stuff. So it got suspended basically about a year ago now. It was kind of, actually, no, maybe not. It was about 7-8 months ago. So I was quite vocal against the lockdowns all throughout 2020. So I got I got temporary bans multiple times, and then I finally got dunked. But so you're vocal about it, censorship, but I guess it's a public network, so you're not having, you can't force them to let you on it. But what are your thoughts about that kind of censorship? It seems like to me, you have a public forum, and then you tell a person they can't say what they want to say.
Look, it's a really tricky one with these things because, like, I'm a private property rights maximalist, right? So if you come to my place, there will be censorship rules, for example, like, you can't, there's things that I would expect you not to say, like, call my mum a whore or something like that. You know what I mean? Like in my house. So, you would get booted out, right? So in that kind of an environment, like, and basically in any environment, like if I own my business, if I don't like you, I should have every single right to throw you out the door. So in that sense, like, I have nothing against like Twitter banning me. The problem is that companies like Twitter and the Googles and the Facebooks and the Instagrams of the world, they are now basically almost public animals in the sense that when you look at Wall Street, when you look at central bank money issuance and all this sort of stuff, they actually create a scenario where these companies benefit at the expense of the populace, right? So like when Wall Street prints, when central banks print money, when they create money out of thin air, that money, where do you think it goes first? It goes into Wall Street, and then, from Wall Street, then it goes into these companies. And what's happening is, like, individuals are being impoverished, and those guys are getting the strength. They're getting monetary capacity, and then they can basically do things that they wouldn't normally rationally do if you and I were the customers. And this is another perversion, I guess, of the fiat system, is that the customers for Twitter and Facebook and Google and all that sort of stuff is not you and I. The customers are the advertisers. So the advertisers actually set the rules of engagement on the thing. So in that kind of environment, of course, censorship is going to be the profitable thing to do, because who are you appeasing? The customer. Now, once again, if we kind of flip to what the future might look like on a Bitcoin standard, is that when the government can't print money, when, you can't, all these things like Wall Street and everything really start to fizzle down into something a lot more lean, when you can't fund excessively these digital monopolies, upstarts begin to compete with them and begin to eat their lunch because they service customers and not advertisers, for example. And you start to get competition balancing things out. And in a competitive environment, censorship is much less profitable. In a non-competitive environment, censorship is very profitable. And that's kind of the world we live in. We live in a non-competitive environment because if you're big enough and get close enough to the monetary spigot, you just print your way, and your real customer is the government.
Obviously, Jack Dorsey's got his own views on the world. Always been an independent guy, running a couple companies, leaves Twitter, changes the name. Now it's Block for Square. And he's talking about sort of allowing everyone to mine Bitcoin and some other big projects. Any thoughts on what he's doing? I mean, clearly he's a supporter of Bitcoin, but I wondered your thoughts on sort of his view on it, if you had any.
Jack's a global treasure, man. He's one of the best guys. Like, I had the pleasure of meeting him almost 6 months ago now, and we got to hang out. And I mean, he was the only thing basically standing in the way of complete and utter destruction of Twitter. And now that he's gone, like, Twitter's going to go down the toilet, go to hell in a handbasket, basically. Like, they've got, now they've got teams of like content health police and God knows whatever other stupidity. And you can kind of like, it's funny, you look at an old photo of Jack when he was at Twitter and you look at a photo of him now and he's like, looks a million times healthier and younger and everything. Like, so, he was the problem with Twitter, and why a lot of people kind of like, pointed the finger at him was that, I mean, he was CEO, but I mean, he owned 4% of the company, and it wasn't him really, like, he was holding back the tide of wokeness and the tide of stupidity in Twitter and doing his best to kind of direct that. And I think he just kind of got to a point where he's like, look, I can do much more for the world and work on Bitcoin stuff directly. And I think he made the absolute right decision. Like, it was bittersweet for me because I actually love, genuinely, Twitter as a product is an incredible product and one of the best things ever built, like from a technological perspective. It's a fantastic product. Unfortunately, it is owned not by Jack Dorsey, it is owned by Wall Street, and the customers are the advertisers, and the advertisers are basically advertising what the government tells them they can advertise. So it's kind of like, it's a really distorted chain. So I think Jack getting out of that, doing the stuff that he's doing on Bitcoin is the best thing that could have happened for his own sanity, for his soul, for the world. And who knows, as Bitcoin continues to strengthen in the world and as all these digital monopolies start to fall apart under the weight of their own stupidity and as governments start to fall apart and all this sort of stuff happens, at some point, maybe, he buys back Twitter and fixes it up, in 10 years.
So as I told you, BitNow bought 16,000 S19 XP Pros or Pros.
Well done.
And then we bought 4,600. We went to Dubai. We signed with Bitmain, a big contract. We're one of 5 companies to buy these new green miners, these S19 XPs, 140 terahash. I'm doing everything I can to build a data center in Michigan, get inexpensive power that's run on, in this case, nuclear. I never say it right, but whatever. I'm curious if you're me. I have decent resources. I took a company public, Alzheimer's, earlier this year with a vaccine and a treatment for Alzheimer's. It went public the first day. I think it traded around $2.5–3 billion valuation. I'm the founder. I'm done okay, and I'm doing okay. Hopefully, I'll continue for my family's sake and for my employees' sake. But if you said to me, Todd, I want you to help with Bitcoin, you're already mining, what would you have me do? Like, what would you say, Todd, this is what you can do to help with Bitcoin? Is it just keep my mining operations and continue to add miners? Should I invest somewhere? Do I give you money for Amber? What do I do to help push Bitcoin forward? I'm serious.
Look, I think what you're doing fundamentally, like this show, is an excellent thing. I think you should get more Bitcoiners on the show, and I can introduce you to people who can think deeply about this topic and not just like be shilling the next shitcoin. So I would be doing that because I think that content is really important. I think the mining fundamentally, I think that's one of the most important things. I mean, products like what we're building at Amber, I think, are really important as well because they form the bridges to get to the new world, right? Like we need to get people across, so that's important. But those bridges are useful insofar as there is some education around Bitcoin. So I think there's definitely room for more important education. There's something I'm working on called the Bitcoin Times, which is like an annual publication. Like it's a really deep publication where it's like I only do it once a year and I bring together the best writers and thinkers. So like I remember edition 2 was like before Breedlove was known. So it was like me, Breedlove, Gigi, Nick Carter, Dan Held and a couple other guys, and we wrote this like incredible 100-page like publication. Then edition 3, I did me, Jeff Booth, Giacomo Zucca, Jimmy Song, Eric Kaysen, and Parker Lewis. Edition 4 just went out, like me, Alan Farrington, Brandon Quidham, and stuff like that, which really, there's a piece in there you should definitely read, which talks about Bitcoin as a pioneer species. Blow your mind completely. So there's room for that kind of stuff. So I think, there's that. And then, I don't know, man, keep buying Bitcoin, put it on your personal corporate balance sheet, all that, get your employees thinking about it. Like, every way you can do that kind of stuff is important. Dude,
I'm thrilled that we got to do this. Do you want to talk about Amber at all? You want to give us any clue? I don't know what Amber is. I admit I'm not that educated. I'm trying to get educated. Sure. Can I learn?
Yeah, absolutely. So Amber's really simple. It's a Bitcoin savings app, basically, or a Bitcoin accumulation app. So it kind of looks and feels a little bit like Coinbase, but minus all the shit coins and minus all the complexity. So you can jump in there, you link your bank account, and you can either buy Bitcoin instantly or sell it instantly, whatever. So you've got that capacity in there. But what we've geared it for is more automation. So for example, you can set up the standard dollar cost averaging. So buy me daily, weekly, monthly, whatever amount you want. But we've also got some more advanced kind of accumulation automation features. So you can auto buy the dip. So you can set a rule. If Bitcoin falls 3% in 24 hours, buy me Bitcoin, right? So instead of like just regularly buying, it buys you every single dip. We've got a funny feature in there called buy the Schiff. So every time Peter Schiff tweets about Bitcoin, it'll buy you some Bitcoin. So that's a really cool feature that we released really recently. So it's kind of like the whole premise of the app is to help you easily accumulate and acquire Bitcoin. And it's, it's really not designed for selling. It's not designed for trading because there's no other coins on there. It's like designed to slowly stack and accumulate Bitcoin.
I really didn't know what this interview was going to be like. I got to be honest with you. I'm thrilled. I really am. I'm glad I met you. I can tell you're a deep thinker. I can tell you have conviction. That's probably what I like about you the most. So you clearly have conviction. You definitely have brought some things to my mind. I've thought about them, not in the way you have, but you brought us a little clarity. I'm going to check out Amber. I'm going to tell everyone. I got a couple of million followers. I don't know what they are, but we'll make sure that we tell them about Amber. Is Amber available in the App Store? Is that kind of thing?
Yeah, so it's available in the App Store. If you're in Australia, you can use it. And if you're in the US, you can use it across 44 states. So places like, I know New York, Hawaii is not available. There's a couple others that are not available, but can you
use it in Nevada?
I believe so, yeah. I'm pretty sure Nevada's good, yeah.
Aleks, I'm thrilled. I appreciate it. Take care.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
No, I'm going to explain to you real quick. Don't be rolling yet. There's a reason for it.
So I did get that right.